The whereabouts of the alleged Butcher Baker's murders and mass graves in the wilderness were noted on a map that authorities discovered in Robert Hansen's Anchorage residence with small X markings. Hansen preyed on sex workers and exotic dancers, kidnapping them and releasing them in the wilderness so he could hunt them like animals. On February 15, 1939, Robert Christian Hansen was born in Esterville, Iowa. Hansen had a difficult upbringing. From an early age, he put in long hours at the family bakery. He suffered from severe shyness as a teen, had severe acne, and was made fun of for his stammer. He was teased by the other lads at school, and the girls he liked turned him down. He was frequently labeled as an introvert. He was an outcast in society and found solace in solitude. He eventually developed a passion for game hunting, using the hobby of tracking animals to express his anger and thoughts of retribution. Robert Hansen enlisted in the U.S. Army Reserve in 1957 at the age of 18, intending to put his traumatic upbringing behind him and achieve success. He married the young woman he met there after serving in the reserves for a year. However, Hansen persisted in feeling abused by the neighborhood and wanted revenge. At the age of 21, in 1960, he persuaded a teenage bakery worker to assist him in setting a school bus garage on fire. Later, after the boy confessed, Hansen was taken into custody. He was left alone and behind bars after his wife filed for divorce. Even though he served only 20 months of his 3-year sentence for arson, he was incarcerated a couple more times for petty theft after that. He nevertheless succeeded in getting remarried to a different local woman. The furthest he could get from his life in Iowa was Anchorage, Alaska, where he relocated in 1967. He fell into a calm lifestyle after relocating to a small town and having 2 kids with his wife. In 1972, he was taken into custody twice, once for kidnapping and attempting to rape a housewife, and once for raping a prostitute. A 17-year-old woman named Cindy Paulson was discovered running furiously in handcuffs and without shoes in 1983, shortly after Hansen relocated to Anchorage. Paulson, a prostitute, revealed her tale to the police. She described being held captive by a man who had shackled her to his car, threatened her with a gun, and taken her to his residence where he had chained her by the neck. The man repeatedly sexually assaulted and tormented the woman before attempting to board a plane and fly her to his cabin about 35 miles north of Anchorage. Paulson was successful in getting away, leaving her shoes behind as proof, as the man prepped the jet for flight. The kidnapper's description was exactly what Robert Hansen matched. Paulson even gave a description of his stammer and named his aircraft. Police were still hesitant to apprehend him though. Hansen acknowledged that they had met, but he insisted that she was posing as him because he had turned down her extortionate demands. He was freed after explaining to authorities the reliable alibi he had, which a buddy had given him. State troopers in Alaska were convinced a serial killer was on the loose in the meanwhile. Troopers were starting to discover bodies as a result of a number of missing sex workers and dancers. Hansen was a leading candidate when 2 bodies and 223 shell casings were found close by. Police, however, required evidence. John Douglas, an FBI agent who contributed to the development of criminal profiling, became involved as a result. Based on the specifics of the case and the harm done to the bodies that were retrieved, Douglas created a psychological profile of the murderer. He hypothesized that the murderer was a skilled hunter who had low self-esteem, a history of being rejected by women, and probably stutter. There was no denying Robert Hansen's close resemblance to the profile, despite the fact that he had previously been cleared. A search warrant was quickly acquired by the police to search Hansen's houses, car, and plane. Their discovery stunned them. It was nearly impossible to believe the anguish that Robert Hansen's victims had gone through. Hansen mostly went after sex workers and exotic dancers in the Anchorage area. He would abduct the women and either fly or drive them in his personal bush plane to his cabin in the wilderness of Alaska. Robert Hansen would release the women in the wild. His preferred place was along the Knik River. They would briefly believe there was a chance of escape. Then, as they fled for their life, he would hunt them down slowly, just like a wild animal. He would pursue the women for hours or even days at a time while carrying a hunting knife and a 223 caliber Ruger Mini 14 rifle, until he found his victim and shot them like game. Police discovered a local aircraft chart tucked away in the headboard of the bed while examining the Butcher Baker's house. Small X's indicated the locations of his murder and the graves of his victims. A few of the X marks corresponded to locations where police had discovered bodies. The total number of X's was 24. When confronted with the evidence in 1984, Hansen admitted to killing 17 women and raping 30 more over a 12-year span. In 1984, Robert Hansen was given a prison term of 461 years plus the rest of his life without the possibility of parole. He passed away in 2014 while incarcerated at Spring Creek Correctional Center in Seward, Alaska.